Yes, Jean-Marc Tanvi is my name. I have 3 questions, please. You've seen the minister this week. Did you talk about the major programs staggering? That's what our minister in France here has talked about often, the staggering. Then I'd like to ask you also about the German majority stake in the MIL RPS program. Do you think that there could be a bigger interest by the French in that program? And then regarding drones, mention was made at the Franco-German Defense Council of possible cooperation about a future Franco-German combat system. Were you surprised by that announcement? And what share do you think you might have in that program? Thank you. Well, that's a lot of questions, says Mr. Trappier. Firstly, I won't reveal to you what the minister and myself talked about. I see the newspapers say things about where I go, but that's the newspapers. Now, it was the first time I saw the minister in my capacity as chairperson of Dassault. I'd seen that minister as president of GFAS before, but I did some explaining about the issues, the challenges, and the problems to do with combat aircraft and Dassault Aviation in particular. So the purpose of our meeting with the minister wasn't to stagger programs, it was to talk about Dassault Aviation. And of course, in that context, I recall that there's a budget for 2017. It's been decided upon. There's a budget for 2018 also. And there are certain ambitions that I recalled a while ago. So we talked about all of those projects so that our minister could put together her own plans and talk to the chief of staff about it and the DGA here in France and make their decisions. It's not as if decisions were made on cutbacks at this point in time. Then regarding the MALE drone, firstly, I think that the project is really exciting because for a long time we've been trying to make drones here in France and in Europe. And I think it's not a fatality that the only solution available should be an American one or Israeli one, even though they're only the only 2 that exist right now in that area. If Europe wants to demonstrate it's capable of taking the reins and rolling out new equipment, I think it's a good example of what we in Europe should be able to do. Our French president wants Europe to have a strong Franco-German pillar that will be a driver, a powerhouse. And here, this is a project I think that's quite good in this domain to illustrate what our president has said, so as to actually put it into practice as well, of course, and make it into a launch in the end. And we could perhaps be assisted by Europe because, as I said already, this is the right time. But the leadership matter. This declaration was made at the Franco-German meeting. German leadership was mentioned. Germany would be prepared to put in the most money. But in the studies underway right now, there is no actual prime contractor. There are 3 companies that agreed together that there would be joint contractors for OCCAR. OCCAR is the body that will award the contracts in conjunction also with the 4 countries that wish to enter this program. They will decide if they want a prime contractor and who should be that prime contractor then. As always, I would call on people to build up Europe, a powerful Europe with performance and skills, and it's up to all the parties concerned to, form their plans on that. And we have made a focal point of Germany here, and our engineers are toing and froing. Some of them now live in Germany, actually, to feed into the team, and there's absolutely no problem. There's no problem here in the area of the MALE drone. Now, on the UCAVs, to my knowledge, that didn't come up in the Franco-German talks, so this for the moment remains Franco-British under the Lancaster House Treaty and future combat aircraft. So this is an agreement that just study the possibility of having a roadmap in the long term, which would have to be produced in 2018. So the 2 states say there will come a day when we'll need to replace the Typhoon, and some fine day we'll have to replace the Rafale too. We'll have to have a look at the timescales. They may not overlap. They may not be the same. And then on that particular day when it rolls around. Maybe France and Germany should be drivers so as to develop a new combat aircraft. You know the skills of Dassault in this area. We are, of course, necessarily a candidate to build up something there with others. Of course, we're not the only ones. In electronics, Thales has also a lot of skills and competencies so as to fit out combat aircraft. Safran also is no doubt a driver, if you don't mind me using the expression, in that area too. So there will be studies done in that context, and we'll have to allocate a budget to that. A budget will have to be allocated. A new combat aircraft has a certain cost, of course. If you refer to the development cost of an American combat aircraft, it's much more expensive, and there are lots of other Europeans too who contribute to giving money to the American Design Office to make an F-35. If Europeans want to pay money for a European combat aircraft, that's fine. Once we make a combat aircraft that's more and more efficient and highly performing, so that the performance of the European teams would be recognized. That's what's going to be studied in the coming few months, weeks, or years. But it doesn't take anything away from the Franco-British UCAV or the male drone or the roadmap for the Rafale, which has the F4 standard and other exports in view and so on. It all hangs together to prepare the future in the very long term.
Excusez-moi, j'ai une...
Yes, I have a question. I'm here on your left, Mr. Trappier. Do you have an idea of the sums that will be added in the European Investment Fund? Well, there's some figures that were given by the Commissioner Bilovska. We have to be very prudent because the project of the Commission, which is defended by Commissioner Bilovska, will be presented at the Parliament in September. So they want to go fast, but so long as the Parliament has not approved this, we have to be prudent. The idea is to contribute up to 20% of a project. Now, do the sums allow this or not? We have to see. It's a question of principle. Which will be the principles that will allow the money of the Commission to be used in a program such as this one, a cooperation, and then we will see what kind of governance we'll have. So there are some important steps, but I think it could be compatible with the launching of a male drone, because we have to finish our studies on the male drone before launching it as such. But I think it's a good example to have a Franco-German cooperation, to have a European cooperation, and to show that we have capacity in the field of surveillance drones.
Bonsoir, messieurs. Olivier Brochet chez Crédit Suisse.
Yes, I'm from Crédit Suisse. I have three small questions, if I may. Well, two small questions and then a bigger question, let's say. The order intake in the first half, what about the pricing compared with what you already have in your backlog? I mean, the pricing of the orders that came in the first half of this year compared with the backlog ones. Then, second question, the number of employees you now have in the United States. And the third question then, do you think it's beneficial for Thales to have a larger stake in DCNS now and in the future? Well, on the third question, I can't give you an answer. You know, Thales has 35% in DCNS. There's a majority shareholder, which is the state, French state. So first of all, we should ask the question of the state, I think. I can't really make any comments myself on that further than what I've said. Then the second question, the precise figure is around 2,500. We've trimmed our sales a bit in the United States. We've got to be flexible because of the drop in deliveries. So we've transferred some completion activities also that we had in Mérignac over to Little Rock. But the number of employees in Little Rock has therefore gone down. 2,500, therefore, includes Little Rock and Teterboro in the U.S. And the service stations as well. And the first question, I've forgotten what was your first question, says Monsieur Trappier. The order entries in the first half of the year. I don't know if we really publish that information. I don't think we report it usually. I do apologize. We can't answer that. You'll be frustrated.
Bonsoir.
Good evening. Karen Fink from the German magazine. You talked about the FCAS, and we had announced this project in 2014, and it was signed in 2017. Post-Brexit, and after this announcement of this Franco-German cooperation, now this Franco-British cooperation, is it still going to happen? Is it still going to happen? And in Germany, in a few years from now, we will have to replace a certain number of combat aircraft. And just like some other European countries that you mentioned, others have decided to buy F-35s. So do you think Germany would also be interested in buying Falcon F-35s? And with this cooperation with Germany, do you hope to be able to sell more to Germany? So F-15, Future Combat Air System, it's the aircraft and the whole system around. So FCAS, sorry. And now to have a potentially European aircraft built with other partners and France, that's a long way ahead of us. So first we have to determine the bricks. So within the framework of Lancaster House, we mentioned FCAS, and we wanted to launch a brick that would be a UCAV demonstrator. So this is a choice that was made by the two defense ministries, and the industrialists have made a certain number of proposals. So this brick is important. Maybe one day we'll have a UCAV program, or certain technological developments, stealth, drones, etc. So this is an element to move towards an FCAS. Now with Germany, well, this is the beginning. It is just an intention. This was announced at a top political level by the presidents. Now, should Germany buy F-35s or not? I mean, it's not up to me to decide. I'm always happy if a European country buys such aircraft, but there are all kinds of aircraft. There's a lot of competition. There's the Typhoon, etc. That's medium and short term. And in the long term, I'm happy that Germany and France might become drivers for the development of a future program. But we first have to decide how we will get there. It is not exclusively with the British that we're going to have this partnership. There'll be BRICS with the British. Will all these countries join together at the end? Maybe, we will see. But the bet made right now is to say, well, let's look at two major countries. Let's have a Franco-German summit. During the Franco-German summit, these two countries are interested in the future of combat aircraft, and we're very happy about that. 5 to 10 years from now, Germany will have to replace a certain number of combat aircraft. 5 to 8 years to develop an operational combat aircraft, or the Rafale? Well, no, you see, Germany will have to replace a certain number of combat aircraft before this cooperation. It could be a temporary solution, but it's up to Germany to decide. They know that the Typhoon exists, that the Rafale exists. If they want to buy a European aircraft, until they do it, until they decide to do it with France, they have all the assets. I would prefer if they bought a Rafale. I would prefer if they bought Rafale aircraft, but I'm not saying that we are selling Rafale aircraft to Germany right now. I've understood your question. And yes, there's an intermediary step where we'll have to replace the Tornado, which is more specialized in air-ground. Now, can Rafale replace Tornado? Well, apparently it is posing a problem.
Yes, hello, I'm from Le Point. I'm just wondering if you're expecting spin-off effects in terms of maintenance and sale of spare parts regarding the sale of Mirage F1s to US companies, and same thing for other countries like India. Well, for Dassault Aviation, no, is the answer. No, we're not integrated into that offer deliberately. We don't want to contribute or help to have F1 Mirages fly in that context. This offer was made totally separately from Dassault. And what about India? Well, India, well, that's if you have a hangar full of things that you don't use and you have a partner, France and India are in a partnership whereby, a partner of yours takes away free of charge the inventory you're carrying so you don't have to rent a hangar, and they need spare parts for their Jaguars. Airplanes last a very long time in India. Well, in that way, it makes it possible for them to have spare parts. I think the idea is a good one. It doesn't make us sell more spare parts, though. It enables the Indians to, hold their own with the Jaguars whilst waiting for the massive arrival of Rafales.
Guillaume Lecomte-Bonnet pour Yen. Je voulais
I want you to go back to business aircraft. You were talking about pre-owned aircraft. Can you tell us how many aircraft have been sold, and at what level should there be so there might be a certain recovery in the sales of new aircraft? That's difficult to say because it depends on supply and demand. So today there are a lot. We do have pre-owned aircraft with us here, but most of the aircraft are with our brokers. So we follow how they are sold. This allows us to have an indication how many were sold. Well, that is disclosed to the public. I do not know if Olivier is here. No, he's not. He could tell us. I do not know exactly how many pre-owned aircraft have been sold. And qualitatively, what is said is that there are more pre-owned aircraft that were sold in the last 6 months than last year. So it is a sign, it is an indication. But in terms of quantity, the right numbers, I don't have the numbers. It's complicated because are they just Falcons? Are you taking into account all the aircraft? Which one? Gulfstream, Bombardier, Bayer? Well, this indication exists. It is materialized. There are lists that are followed, and you can have access to that on the net. And are you ready to make discounts so as to accelerate orders on these pre-owned aircraft? No, for new aircraft, we carry out commercial negotiations. They're very tough. Yes, we carry out discounts. It would be a lie to say that we don't carry out any discounts, but yes, we do carry out discounts. We try to earn our bread and butter by selling aircraft one after the other by making discounts, but you know us, we don't sell them at a loss. But pre-owned aircraft, well, people do not we have to get rid of our stock, so there is a larger drop in the prices in the local markets than the discounts we can make on new aircraft. So this creates this disparity. When you want to buy a new aircraft, you sell your aircraft, which is at a low price, and we have the Blue Book. And if you want to get 100 to buy an aircraft 120, well, you get much less, 60 or 70. So you have to get plus 30, 40, or 50 more. So then it's a question of decision. You need to put in more money to buy a new aircraft. And maybe you carried out these operations with the Blue Book reference.
Bonsoir, Marjorie Lénart du Parisien.
Yes, I'm from the Parisien newspaper. I'd like to talk about the transformation plan. You repeated the 9 sites will be retained and so on, but at the same time, the Argenteuil site, there are lots of concerns. CGT Trade Union has, I think, often alerted you to that fact, and ourselves as well. So they continue talking about an upcoming closure. Recently, they had experts appointed who confirmed their concerns, actually. So I was just wondering, what are your guarantees about maintaining that site in operation in Argenteuil? And then, second point, if possible, at the end of the specialization plan, the number of employees that will remain in the Argenteuil facility. And then you talk about investments at the end of the specialization plan. What will be the investments then in the Argenteuil facility? Well, I see that CGT has been talking to you. Well, that's only normal, logical, I suppose. But I also talk to the CGT trade union people. And, I represent the company, obviously. So, the question is, can I guarantee that I won't close Argenteuil in the next 100 years? Well, I can't guarantee that to the CGT, to my shareholders, to the journalists, to anybody. Now, for the moment, our transformation plan hasn't been done on the basis of a closure of Argenteuil, number 1 point. Number 2 point is the following. I was surprised to read in the Parisien newspaper and in some other handouts from the CGT as well that the Argenteuil site isn't good, we should close it down. Well, they said it in the handout that Argenteuil should be closed. I'm surprised. Personally, maybe I'm not a good chairman. Maybe I should close down Argenteuil. But so we're kind of, we're upside down, he says in English. So the thing is, says the journalist, the machines are leaving the plant. Well, the things we've got to specialize. Primary parts, we've decided to put them in Secla. Everybody agrees with that. And we've got to have dedicated plants. All the experts on planet Earth could come together about this, but the best expert on this is ourselves, because we've been doing this for 100 years. So that's the most rational decision to take. We're not going to close down Argenteuil for the sake of closing down Argenteuil. We've got to specialize. We've got a transformation plan. We've got to be competitive. So Secla was decided upon by our industrial experts as being the place where certain things should be done. So we're creating this specialized area of activity in Secla. Argenteuil will retain a certain number of kinds of activities, and we'll be adding other ones, and it'll impact some employees. Of course, people are always worried when there's change. That's normal. And, you can explain things well or badly, but people will always be concerned when there's some changes going on. And we provided answers to our employees, not just to the CGT trade union, but to all of our employees. And it's on the basis of volunteership that those who were working on primary parts will continue to work on those, and the others will remain in Argenteuil. It's not as if we're emptying out the facility in Argenteuil of its work. Most of the work being done in Argenteuil will continue to be done in Argenteuil. And what I'm saying here, I've said before, I've seen that they put in the newspapers that there's a plan to build a plant in Saint-Ouen-le-Monde. But, 9 is good enough as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to up the number to 10 facilities because, we have land. We're occupying the land we already have. Land costs money, and we already have money in Secla and Martignas, which is a big site. We've got a site in Mérignac. We've got lots of land in our facilities. We can optimize the existing facilities without setting up a new one in the Paris area. It's not easy to be in the Paris area either, of course, for a production plant. So for the moment, we're staying in part in Argenteuil. And we'll be also upgrading the Argenteuil site on the basis of the work that will be done and that will remain in Argenteuil.
Bonsoir, Christian Schubert.
Christian Schubert from the German press, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Just a question on the future Franco-German combat aircraft. Do you think it would be good to include the British also in this partnership? And if yes, why? Well, yes, why not? The more we add, the merrier. But we have to remain efficient. It should be planned for. So there are discussions with our governments. And what I'm asking for is for a certain amount of stability. We ask that for taxes, for all social issues, and for cooperation. If there's a long-term cooperation that is launched now with the Germans, just as we launched a cooperation with the British, within the framework of a Franco-British treaty, we should be able to integrate it. We have time before we come up with another combat aircraft, but we have to look at all the assumptions. If the British want to join this Franco-German cooperation, why not? If the German want to join the Franco-British for a combat drone, well, why not also? It's a variable geometry. If the British want to join the male drone, well, why not? If these are financial contributions without harming our operational efficiency, because it has to be efficient, otherwise we will not be competitive when we'll want to export, when we'll want to provide our armies and satisfy the operational needs of our armies. So all this is prepared well in advance, and well, why not? I'm ready. And a second question, if I may, on the replacement of Tornado in Germany. Are you making any particular efforts to present the Rafale, to convince the Germans? No. Why not? Well, if the Germans were interested, they can ask me. But to say that we're going to go to Germany and we're going to have male drones with our friends with Airbus. But the Rafale is there, it's on the shelf, it is operating, we see it every day. If Germany is interested in the acquisition of Rafale, Mrs. Merkel can talk to Mr. Macron, the DJ, Mrs. Zuber, can talk with God knows who, because we are waiting for the name of the DJ, Laurent Coligny, beforehand. So everything is there. And it would be a bit strange if Dassault promoted the Rafale when all the officers meet, with each other. It is a formal demand from Dassault or the French authorities. We would be delighted to carry out a marketing campaign on the Rafale in Germany. The Rafale is air-ground aircraft. We demonstrate it every day. The Tornado is also an air-ground aircraft. So, yeah, the Rafale can also do it. So it depends on the deadlines. I do not know when you're supposed to replace the Tornado. If it is a long-term, we can have a future combat aircraft. If it is medium-term, it is better to take an existing aircraft.
Reuters, je suis là.
Hello, I'm from Reuters. I'm over here. Regarding the Rafale, were you surprised by what we heard about Malaysia? They seem to have suspended their request. Are you worried about that? And then for India, do you not think that we'll be moving towards a single-engine contract outside of the marine Rafales, the naval Rafales? Might that not change the twin jet need? And then you talked about other prospective clients. Who are the countries? Which are the countries on your radar screen at the moment? Well, I can't tell you all that. Regarding Reuters, I think you had exclusive information not so long ago, so I won't contradict the information you published. But regarding Malaysia, to my knowledge, I might be wrong, it seems to me there is still a need to purchase combat aircraft. The question is when. The question is when. It's not right now. I agree with Reuters. There will be elections too in Malaysia, and I think it will be probably after the elections. But where I don't agree is saying that Malaysia is forever decided not to purchase combat aircraft. That I don't think would be confirmed, is confirmed, at least it hasn't got to our ears. And when we read your article, we looked into this, and a priori, there's no cancellation of the purchase of combat aircraft. But the question is when. It's just a question of when. Regarding India, India has a need for combat aircraft, between 500, 600, 700 maybe. There's an idea that single-engine ones could be produced alongside twin-engine ones. There are Mirage 2000, 55 of them already. And being developed, you have the LCA, the TJAS. The development work goes back a while, but the single engine ones, the TJAS, and then in parallel with the development TJAS, if there's a single engine call for tender out, well, that's India's business. But then you have the twin jet and aircraft alongside that. Contractually, for the moment, there are 36 of those, but we hope there'll be others after that. They won't just remain at 36. So it's a question of timing. Who will buy what, when, and how, and so on. And they can't all pay for it all at the same time. It's true in France, it's true in India, even though in India the budgets are fairly substantial, given the perceived threat by India regarding its neighbors. So there's reality like that there, and the more India wants Rafales, the better it'll be. But it's a very good plane. And the other prospective customers, well, I won't talk about that here today because you can probably guess yourselves, but it's not really topical right now, so I won't talk about that.
Toujours sur l'Inde, les
India still. The aircraft for the Navy you were talking about earlier on, they will be the same ones as the French Navy, a copy-paste of the French Navy aircraft? That's a question. And do you think that the Indian Navy do you think that we could anticipate the delivery thanks to excess aircraft that we would have in the French Navy? Well, I'm not going to replace the French Navy. I can't talk about that, but there's an ability to equip with 2 flotillas to equip the aircraft carrier, which will become operational in a year from now. So the Navy has calibrated its number, and I don't think the French Navy has aircraft stored anywhere. So you have to ask them the question. Now, will it be ready to lend a few? I think that the 2 navies will have to discuss this, but that's not the question today. The question today is you build Rafales, build Navy Rafales that will equip the Indian aircraft carrier. Is that possible? Can it take off from an aircraft carrier? Can it land on an aircraft carrier? What type of mission? What adaptations are necessary? Because when it is, it has to be customized if it is an aircraft carrier. So we're in that phase upstream now to find out whether we can lend aircraft or not. Well, this is still upstream in the process, in the Indian process. It's still a bit too early. But the Navy might be interested to discuss with another aircraft carrier operator. They're already doing it with the American Navy because they operate regularly together in the Gulf area. And to receive the help of the Indian Navy, that would be great because it's a strategic partnership between India and France, and we need to discuss this strategic partnership, and that has to be done by the politicians and the officials.
Bien, une dernière question.
Well, perhaps one last question, if you like, if there is a question over there. Yes, good evening. I'm from Reuters agency. You talked about a joint contractorship, co-contractorship model for the male drone. So there's no main prime contractor, it's joint contracting. Now, could that model function as well for the development of a new combat aircraft, or is it more important in that arena to have a prime contractor? And if so, do you think it could be negotiated upon? Would you be prepared to leave that role to BAE or Airbus if they were to arrive on the scene? Well, on the male drone, we are in the study phase. So in the study phase, it was decided to co-contract. You don't need a prime contractor for the preliminary study work. So when the program is launched someday, well, then the responsibility of knowing if we need a prime contractor or not I mean, be wary of the word prime contractor. Prime contractor has got to do with contracts. Will we enter into a contract with one? Will the contract be entered into with one main industrialist who will dispatch it to others then and shoulder responsibility and be accountable for what happens elsewhere? You know, when it comes to development of such programs, it could be dangerous. So I would say this would have to be weighed up very carefully. But you could have an architect, maybe, because the issue is somebody has got to think in holistic terms about the whole product and advise the project owner, who would be the state or the states, about the way in which they'd like to organize efforts on this. That's for the male drone. For the combat aircraft, we're far from making European combat aircraft at the moment. The only combat aircraft that's European that we have a reference on, apart from the Rafale that was done alone, is the Eurofighter. Now, the contractual model regarding responsibility, liability, and the results observed, is that the right model for future combat aircraft? I won't answer the question, but I'll raise the question. And it's not up to me to answer it. It's up to those who did it, really, to ask this question, to challenge themselves about this, the same way as the French are wondering about their own contractual model. What's the best efficiency, the most efficient way to have the best combat aircraft in the hands of the armed forces? We're thinking of the French armed forces first, because we're a French company, we're in France. So the idea is to make sure your armed forces and your politicians, because it's the head of state who is the head of the army, that French pilots would have the right plane in any theatre of operations for nuclear deterrence or for an aircraft carrier or whatever. And France has certain specificities in that area. So we'll see then. If you look at the French contracts, it's not just Dassault, there are other companies too. We often work on a co-contractorship basis. The DGA here in France assumes responsibility as project owner for dispatching the work for development. Dassault often acts as the architect because we have the competencies to do it. We are kind of able to take this helicopter view, if you pardon the expression, to act as the architect, orchestrate it. So that's the way it's done. But it's up to others, it's the officials, not me, who should decide how the contractual relationship should run. But this role of architect is a good solution. But I'm not saying we would be the architect, but we might like to be the architect, given the skills and the competencies we have in that area already.
Bien, c'était la dernière question.
Okay, so that was the last question. And I'd like to thank you for having come here. And we will meet certainly at the Université de la Défense and for the closing of our 2017 accounts. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.